Tropical Storm Arlene drifting towards Cuba on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for June the 3rd. Arlene is the strongest storm in the world right now after the demise of Typhoon Mawar. It's now an extratropical low moving through Japan. Arlene, the only active tropical cyclone and number 20 for the year so far. We are code blue. We're also running live automated streaming on Arlene with satellite imagery and all the latest on that storm right now as well. There it is on day 3 of Atlantic hurricane season. The Atlantic as a whole looking quite a bit more animated compared to what we were looking at in the weeks leading up to hurricane season. Looks like it's decided to really want to get going. On day 20 of the Eastern Pacific though, it's still fairly quiet here. A few little areas there in the doldrums of the intertropical convergence zone, but nothing looking like it's going to develop anytime soon. In the Western Pacific then, we have what's left of Mawar, post-tropical, could still cause significant issues in Japan. A 30% area of interest now behind it, in a similar place actually, could affect Guam and the Mariana Islands once again. And moving further towards the west there, we're now giving a 20% chance for an area of interest in the Arabian Sea. On both of these occasions really, we're just waiting for some more model consensus. There are models, particularly for the Western Pacific system, that all have a system forming, but it's a matter of where and when. There's not much agreement on that just yet. Satellite imagery in the last 24 hours looks like this. There's not really any standout areas that have had lots of convection, maybe a few of those tropical waves moving across Africa right now, and a little disturbance over the Bay of Bengal, but generally a pretty quiet picture. Here's the latest satellite imagery, the visible in this afternoon's evening hours in the Gulf of Mexico, and you can see the storm Arlene not looking a very pretty picture. It's extremely bare bones, but it is still a tropical storm right now, and it's been like this for pretty much the whole time. Gradually drifting southwards, it'll eventually curl southeastwards towards Cuba, but it won't get there as a tropical storm, and pretty much everyone agrees, and as such there are no watches or warnings in effect. As a byproduct from Arlene, on the right hand side there you can see a lot of those convective cloud tops moving over Florida and enhancing thunderstorm activity over there right now across a large part of the panhandle, as a matter of fact. The peninsula I should say, not the panhandle. And you can see Arlene there though still generating decent amounts of convection. It is struggling a little bit. It is not expected to intensify any further, and we do expect it to weaken to a depression fairly soon. But look again over there, the Florida Peninsula, big wave of sharp thunderstorms moving through right now, passing Tampa, moving on up towards Orlando and onwards. Sea surface temperatures then around the world. Eastern Pacific really getting warm there off the coast of Mexico. Still some catching up to do out in the open ocean though. The Atlantic looking good as well. The Caribbean there, a few spots getting towards 30 degrees Celsius now in the Caribbean, and in the Gulf of Mexico really perking up where Arlene is. It's around 27 to 28 degrees Celsius. Around the Florida region in Florida Bay down towards the southeast, it's fairly warm there as well. Indian Ocean looking good. Regular 30-degree temperature waters across large swathes of that zone. June could see some more activity here. And in the southwest Indian Ocean looking like this right now. Temperatures starting to drop down a little bit further as we enter the winter period over there. And the Australian region, hardly any of the mainland coast now sustaining 26 degrees Celsius waters. This basin is pretty much shut down. South Pacific Ocean as well. GFS was hinting at possibly one or two late season developments here, but nothing doing by the looks of things. Sea surface temperatures dropping off. And finally the Western Pacific, the one I was expecting, warming. Still a big gap after Mawar, by the way. Really cooled those sea surface temperatures, but they will rebound. quite quickly, I should imagine. Philippine Sea still looking good after all that. And you can see even clearer here on the sea surface temperature anomaly chart just what Mawar did over there to the northeast of the Philippines. All of that stalling really causing massive upwelling down to about -3 compared to average, but it will recover, and the Western Pacific as a whole is around average now. Eastern Pacific above average near the coast of Mexico, Atlantic above average in the Caribbean and in parts of the Gulf. The El Nino effect really starting to pipe up there as well. Oceanic heat content really showing some good signatures now in the Arabian Sea from Jamaica across to almost the Yucatan Peninsula. The Eastern Pacific has been holding steady and hasn't improved very much in the last month or so now, but it is still there. It's much better than what we were looking at last year, and you can see Mawar there has taken a bite out of the western part of the Western Pacific as well, but still some very fair conditions in the Philippine Sea. Computer models then, this is GFS for the next 5 days. The short range, you can see what happens to Arlene. It's already fairly weak circulation, gets dragged southeastwards along the Cuban peninsula briefly. Here it is again, moving southwards at first, then jink towards the east and then gradually east-northeastwards through the northern Bahamas by the looks of things, what's left of its circulation, although it would be very difficult to trace by that point, and I doubt things will be too significant over there. Japan, you can see what's left of Mawar moving off towards the northeast there, affecting the Japanese islands for a little bit longer before fleeing the scene, and then we're looking at 1 or 2 potential systems here that GFS has. Most confident about that one to the south there near the Mariana Islands, but it also has another one possibly developing more towards the subtropics to the northeast of the Mariana Islands. I would not suggest anything on that one just yet, but the one near Guam could end up becoming something. And also the Arabian Sea. GFS has had hot signals on this one for quite a while and still is over the next 5-day periods for tropical development not far from the Maldives, as a matter of fact, before continuing further northwards towards the coast of western India. Within that 5-day period, that is a tropical storm forming there on the GFS. ECMWF, I think, has something fairly similar but a little bit different location further west. So once again, 20% on that, I think, is a fair reflection. And looking at rainfall estimates, this is for the Micronesian region towards Guam and the Mariana Islands from that potential system that could form within that 5-day period, could cause once again large rainfall hauls over some of these areas that already experience significant impacts from Mawar. You can see here that is on Yap, 6 inches, 150 millimeters, 5 inches in Palau, and up towards 8 inches in Guam. That would be 200 millimeters, so more substantial rainfall amounts, and the models could of course deviate further east, although I would say it's more likely they'll deviate west. But nonetheless, 34 inches near the center of that system if it does get going like the GFS forecasts, but that is thankfully quite far away from land. So maybe another potential issue coming up. Let's check it out in the longer range then. This is what happens next on the GFS, day 5 to 10. This system eventually develops properly around the 8th or 9th of June and then intensifies quite substantially there towards category 2, probably category 3 status there, moving northwards and then eventually starting to turn northeastwards towards Japan. Now you may remember we had all kinds of things like this for Mawar, which ended up giving the Philippines a much bigger run for its money, and of course the other regions, so who knows, this one might trend further west as well, but we won't really say for sure. And then this Arabian Sea system, GFS really has this one developing quite substantially once again. A tight core, pressure getting down to 955 millibars on this latest model run, and then it moves off towards the northeast, wobbling about quite a lot as it eventually tries to get close to the coast of India. Not far from Mumbai, probably towards the end of that 10-day period, as it starts to turn more towards the north. So another potential threat there, certainly something to watch out in the medium range. That's all the serious stuff done though. You can take a look at the Force 13 merch store by scanning the barcode up there in the top right and taking a look at all of the products that we've got right now. We're now selling socks, would you believe? I think they're quite comfy actually, but we're also still waiting for Hone, and those shirts are still available until that blasted thing forms. In the silly range, it's not Hone, but it's something that would make our member Ethan very excited. An Eastern Pacific system that forms right near the end of the 16-day period. There it is, 16th, 17th of June, and eventually becomes a hurricane there. So that would be a promising start to the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, but that is very much towards the far end of that model run. A long way to go before we get to that, but I'm trying to hold those Eastern Pacific storms back as hard as I can to stop Ethan from getting very excited. And in the Western Pacific, the continuation of that next typhoon, if it happens, starts to steer off towards the northeast, quite similar to Mawar really track-wise, just that it's further towards the east. And whether that trend starts to take it further west like it did with Mawar in the initial stages, well, that's a big open question waiting to be answered. Becomes quite fierce as an extratropical cyclone as well, this system, moving off towards the northeast, as many do. They do become very potent extratropical cyclones, and there it is, steering along the path of another system there into the islands of Alaska. You can join our Discord server to talk about all of that and more. Discord.gg/Force13, and you can chat with over 3,400 weather watchers from around the world. Well, it was only 3 years ago. I say only, it still feels like it was yesterday. Cyclone Nisarga, which was making landfall along the coast of India, very similar to that other system we were looking at in the models. And of course we had Tropical Storm Cristobal, which made a 60-mile-per-hour landfall on the coast of Mexico, not Veracruz, but the province to the east of it. I forget the name now, unfortunately. And then it eventually moved inland, stalling once again and then moving northwards. That was on this day in 2020. Nisarga, of course, being a much stronger storm as it made landfall, and that one really surprised a lot of people as well. Spun up very quickly. The Atlantic's lit up first then out of the National Hurricane Center regions. The next name on the list is Brett. In the Eastern Pacific, we're still waiting for Adrian, and in the Central Pacific, we're really still waiting for Hone. In the Western Pacific, next up now is Guchol. In the North Indian Ocean, it will be Biparjoy, the next name on the list there. 20 storms so far in 2023. The average for a whole year is 92, so you think this year might be starting to get a wiggle on pretty soon. In the Australian region, the next name is Jasper. The Southwest Indian Ocean, if we get a storm before the end of the month, it will be named Gizani. And in the South Pacific, Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.